Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 6, episode 31. My name is Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I'm talking to Abby. Abby is in college in a music therapy program. We discuss misophonia and comorbid conditions, her mental health journey, which really just began a few years ago, her experiences growing up in a very stable and happy home, and her coping methods for miso along the way. We also, of course, talk about her music therapy program, and I'll have a link in the show notes to the documentary she mentions at the end. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out, as always, by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And by the way, please do head over and leave a quick review or rating wherever you listen to the show. It really helps us go up in the ratings and reach more listeners that way. Remember, you can sign up for private coaching sessions by me. There's a link in the show notes or through social. I'm working with folks anywhere in the world to develop a plan for you to help manage your misophonia better. Also, thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about it at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. All right, here's my conversation with Abby. Abby, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
So, I usually ask the usual questions, kind of where are you located?
I am from around the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. I'm about like an hour southwest kind of direction from Pittsburgh.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you not near that East Palestine, Ohio thing? Or
I'm more towards like a tinier area. I'm from small town called Scottsdale, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And what do you do around there?
I am currently a junior music therapy major at Seton Hill University in Greensburg, PA.
Very cool. Yes, I definitely want to talk about some of that. Very interesting. Okay. And I guess, I feel like I'm still stuck in COVID times, but that's all in person, I'm assuming.
Yes. So when COVID happened, I'm a class of 2020, so I am like that COVID class. So I was right in the middle of my senior year, and we all went online for the rest of my senior year. So, I went into college. They had just started exploring, wearing masks, the whole shebang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How's it been? I guess, what was the college experience like, and how's it changed since all that happened? Misophonia-wise in particular.
Misophonia-wise in particular. So that's a good question. I have really grown a lot as a person. Crying a lot. I have knee problems, and I had surgery right before I started my freshman year. So not only was I dealing with, walking around with my leg completely straight, without crutches for the first time, but I was also dealing with I'd never personally been, really challenged before, things, I struggled with misophonia, but I never really, things kind of came a little more easier to me when it came to high school. I had my challenges, but then when I really got to college, becoming an adult, that took me for a loop for some time.
Yeah, you're talking about like the just that kind of new independence or academically challenged.
Exactly.
And did that add a lot of stress? Because obviously stress adds a lot, and change adds a lot to the or reduces our ability to handle sounds. Do you feel like that was connected?
Oh, without a doubt. I've come a long way from, I think I've always known that I had this. I used to think it was just a phobia, because every time I would talk about, I would say, oh, I think I have this thing called misophonia. I've brought it up a couple of times in college, and actually not many people, at least from what I can understand and what I've been seeing, a lot of people around me, even older adults and stuff, have not really known what it is. And so I've kind of felt like no wonder I doubted if it was really if it was like something I had like a problem I had or if it was just
Y-
something that I was alone with for a bit, because I felt it was like
Yeah,
normal.
yeah. A lot of us have gone through that phase, whether it's been short or for many, many decades, where yeah, we don't know what it is. No one else is talking about it. We don't even know how to bring it up. Um, I guess when did you find out that it had a name? Like, how did you? We'll go back to your background, childhood as well. But I'm curious, kind of, how did you discover that this was actually a real thing that other people have?
So I'm the kind of person that likes to know answers. I don't look at things as labels. I just kind of, you know, I just want to know things about myself. I think I've always been that way since as a kid. So
Hmm.
mainly when I first had access to the internet, when I was like, I got like my first like an iPod at like 11 years old, and
Hmm.
really, I just from such an early age, I knew something was off. I don't know if I want to say off, but I knew something was. I did not like knowing why sound was so sensitive to me. And my parents just looked at me like they love me, and it took them a while for them to be like, "Oh, she's just sensitive." When it really took them
Hmm.
years to be like, "Oh, this is not just normal sensitivity." So it was through me doing my own research that I picked up my iPod one night, late at night, because I couldn't sleep because, my dad was snoring and I could hear him across the wall. And I picked up my phone, remember vividly typing in like sound sensitivities, hating sounds. Why do
Hmm.
I feel like I want to rip my ears off, And then I
Yeah.
found misophonia, hatred of sound.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was blew my mind I was only 11. So that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. 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 I guess, yeah. Then going back, like, when do you remember kind of around when it started for you?
I would say as early as a toddler.
Oh, wow. Okay. What kind of incidents do you remember?
Nothing like 100% specific, more of like, you know, as toddlers, are developing and of course they cry over different things because that's their way of communication.
Hmm.
Well, for me, I basically cried at like everything. And, that's when my parents were first like, oh, okay, she's just, a really sensitive child. And I
Hmm.
was, one of those kids that were one of those toddlers that were a lot to manage because every little thing that bothered me, of course, I would burst into have, temper tantrums.
Hmm.
And so really I would say around the ages between 3 and 5, especially starting to be in a school, environment. That's what I would say for sure. Like between the ages of 3 and 5 is like early memory.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you were obviously triggered very early at home, and then that continued to school as well. Sounds like, right? You were being triggered a lot at school.
Yeah. And it was just so confusing because over time I knew that the sounds that I was sensitive to, and I still struggle with this even as I'm 20 now, almost 21, and I still struggle with the fact that people can't, control what they're doing most of the time.
Hmm.
The simple chewing, the coughing, the breathing, the snoring. They can't control that. So it's like really, you know, frustrating when you understand that, even when you're a bit younger. You understand that, but you can't understand why you can't control like that fight or flight response, you
Was there
know?
anything? Was there anything happening around the home? Early around that toddler age, 3 to 5, even.
Uh,
Like, were you
I
moving
would,
around a lot, or was there stress at home, some sort, maybe?
oh no, I luckily have been in my same childhood home for years now, like my whole
Hmm.
life. Um, but I am very lucky that I have a loving home, of course, like I love my dad, but he is a naturally loud individual. So,
Yeah.
that is one of my first, connections to misophonia. Was That's where that first frustration came from, was that my father is such a naturally loud person. Sometimes that's where I get it from. I'm also kind of naturally loud, but he does things that he can't control. And as a kid, how are you know that like he can't control it. You love this person, but yet like they're making sounds that you just want to retreat.
Right. Yeah, and obviously you probably have fuzzy memories, if at all, from the toddler age. But do you remember around like what? And you don't have to make the triggers or go into too much detail. But like when you did start to notice actual triggers, what was basically your dad as your first trigger that you remember?
Pretty much, it was
Yeah.
pretty much first one I could connect with is snoring
Mm-hmm.
and chewing. Even like it mainly comes from like noticing that like not just my dad but other family members. Like for example, if my sister's listening, hi Kaylee. She
Hi,
chews
Kelly.
like a horse. Hi, she chews like a horse sometimes, and
Yeah.
um, so it's just making those connections and just being like, what is going on?
And what was the reaction of your other family members as you were? Well, actually, maybe what were you? You were probably just not like staying quiet. You sound like you had temper tantrums. Was that continuing into like, you know, further into later school years? I'm just curious, kind of how that your reaction was, and then people's reaction to your reaction.
Yeah. Um, I would say not just like temper tantrums. It would be to temper tantrums, but I, as a little kid, I did not know. Obviously, as normal little kids don't know how to express, but how I would express is, not just screaming and crying, but I would, sometimes like I feel really bad, but this is the truth. I, would hit my sister. I
Mm,
would, you know, um, it went from that I was really little when I did that. And of course, like that had to be corrected immediately, and that took a couple years. It went from, like kind of like kicking and screaming and, having more violent outbursts as a little
yeah.
toddler to years later, I would start mocking. So
Hmm.
if someone was heavy breathing beside me, I mocked their heavy breathing. And, sometimes I really would be in public and I would have to try to hold myself back from like mocking the person beside me because I don't know. I like to think it's just that was just how my brain as a younger kid was trying to, process. But my main reaction, especially in school environments, was to cry.
Hmm.
And that was from when I was, I'd say, early child to, I'd say, my elementary school years, like my last one, like the last time I remember having outbursts from sound, because they used to have to take me um, away. They had to put me like outside the classroom, so I'm able to even take tests
Hmm.
over simple noises happening. Even somebody like tapping their foot, like even seeing the physical movement, that would just drive me insane. So I would say I finally was able to start coping better by the time I hit middle school, sixth grade.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, a few things there. So, in elementary school, or well, whenever you're taking tests, like it sounds like your school, like in advance, kind of knew you had an issue and would actually accommodate you that way and move you out of the classroom to do the test.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know if they would consider it. I think like I had some really
They're just
good
like, let's get
teach.
this girl out of here, so that other
That
people
was
can.
it, that might have been what they were thinking.
Yeah.
But also I did have some, teachers I had connections with, and I think they just knew what was best for me. Maybe I like to think some of my teachers that got to know me pretty well. I'm an easy person to get to know. Um, Knew that I just what I needed. They
Hmm.
sensed it. There are some people that sensed it early on, and kind of always in the back of their mind, like wondered, this isn't
Yeah.
just like a normal thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like you probably felt trapped, right? Before you start crying, like is that the kind of feeling that you had in class, just feeling trapped, not being able to leave the situation, something that a lot of us feel.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. And also just like that tight feeling in your chest, and you want to focus, but you're
Hmm.
like just staring at one specific word on the page, and you just can't.
Yeah.
You just feel like your head feels like all of a sudden your chest is heavy, but then your head feels like weightless.
And it also sounds like the misokinesia. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but the visual triggers started coming up pretty early for you as well, right?
Oh, what is it called?
Misokinesia. It's Misokinesia. It's basically visual triggers. So being triggered by the movements that suggest a sound.
That I had no idea what that was. So,
Hmm. So
yes, for
even
sure.
if you're yeah even if you're seeing somebody chew from like a mile away, but you're not hearing it, and that definitely throws people for a loop. And it's
Oh
very
my gosh.
very tightly linked. Um, so that might have blown your mind. I don't know, but another thing actually I want to mention. I don't know if you're familiar with. So you said mocking, and it sounds a lot like mimicking has been come up a lot as like a coping mechanism where people say they often feel better if they are kind of making the same sound as the person triggering them. And there's been some research into that as well to try to explain why that is. And there's some suggestions that it has to do with a certain kind of neuron in your brain called the mirror neuron. Um, and so, yeah, that mocking you may have been mocking them, but there might have been a part of you that was, made to feel better by doing that. So that is something that is also a phenomenon, mimicry. Maybe a nicer word for mocking.
My mind is blown because, I might have done my own research, but I, yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
that
Look those up after, and or you can listen to more episodes, and you'll hear a lot of these things come up a lot. So I think yeah, I might kind of shed some more light on your on your past experiences.
oh, absolutely.
So then what did how did it affect maybe friendships growing up? Like obviously you talked about like your parents and your sister and your teachers. Like did it affect how who you were hanging out with, what kids thought of you?
Yes, it definitely affected how others saw me. For sure, like thinking that as I'm sure many of us have experienced with this condition, like being like weird, like odd and weird, and kind of like outcasted a little bit in that kind of regard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what really helped me in that sense was I don't know if you could tell from me talking alone, but I'm also a very friendly, social person. So I think even more as a kid, I was very, very social, and that kind of was a good masking technique for me to hide the fact that or try to hide the fact, but not very well, that I, there was people I was hanging out with that I might cannot stand the sound they're making, but I knew it would be socially unacceptable, to not hang out with them because they're just making a noise that
Mm-hmm.
I don't like. Um, I just didn't want to miss out. I didn't want to be alone, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because this couldn't, I knew, even knowing not, at first not knowing what it was, but, not wanting to be alone, that seemed to trump over, you know, being really picky and choosy about who I spent time with. And sometimes being picky and choosy kind of worked out in my favor down the line in the
Yes.
future.
Yeah.
But as a kid, it's you're learning how to be social, and I developed a lot of masking for misophonia and many other different things that I did not know was on the surface until I got to college.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel a lot of us end up being kind of, or at least having an introverted side. Sounds like you maybe push yourself to be even more extroverted because some part of you recognized that this could really be a lonely condition?
Yeah, I think it took me even up to being almost 21 years old to realize that was subconsciously what I might have been doing as a kid.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
knew that the natural part of me that was, like my dad, like we're both friendly, kind of louder spirited, especially when we get excited or passionate about a topic, kind of people. I kind of knew, like now realizing now as an adult, realizing that I used that side of me to my advantage the best that I could, even though the misophonia and the temper tantrums as a younger kid, um, I've learned how to cope a lot better, but I nearly started off with like trying to mask it.
Yeah. And as you were getting older and go through high school and all that stuff, did you start to see any professionals about whether it's misophonia or any comorbid conditions? You don't have to get into the other conditions, but like,
Oh,
yeah, just
I'm
curious
okay.
if you,
I'm okay with
yeah.
that. Absolutely. Um, so I've never gotten diagnosed with misophonia. It's just at the current moment, it's something that I like. You know how you can do like self
Yeah.
diagnose.
Most of us have to
Uh,
do that because a lot of people won't do it, won't diagnose for misophonia.
yeah, it's just like I said at the beginning. Even to this day, because I've started my mental health journey later in my life. I had all these signs of different comorbidities, but I didn't know because I just thought we all thought that I was just sensitive, that maybe I was just gonna grow out of some things like the temper tantrums. Like, of course, I
Hmm.
grew out of the temper tantrums, but they come out in their own ways. Those kind of feelings, even from when I was a kid. So I've been on that mental health journey just for the last since 2020.
Hmm. Hmm. So then, what were your coping mechanisms, other than just trying to be more extroverted and kind of maybe push down uh, the misophonia stuff? Was there what other coping, like earbuds and just kind of the usual stuff that you were doing until you
Oh,
got to 2020?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think like it had always been like I currently am using my I got them this last year. I got them for Christmas or something. But these AirPods that soundproof. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
these have been my saving grace. Oh my
The
goodness.
AirPod Pros.
AirPod Pros, exactly.
Yeah, I'm wearing them right now too.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, they're great. I highly recommend. um,
It's the
they're
perfect. I mean, they're a great blend of like having noise canceling, but then not like messing, like being somewhat discreet and not kind of messing with your hair or whatever.
oh exactly. Or like if it, like hearing noisy, being in noisy environments out in public. You know how some
Hmm.
people, I have people in my college that wear like big headphones,
Hmm.
just because they want to listen to music or they might, be trying to cope with sounds themselves. Everyone has a different story, but I've seen people walk around in public, and I know that connection where some people have like those noise canceling headphones, the bigger ones look
Hmm.
obvious, and that's what
Yeah.
I hate about like people, being so judgmental is that like you have to be discreet. Otherwise, otherwise, um, you get judged. You know,
Yep. Yeah. We know. We definitely know all about that. Um, and while we're on the topic of judging, like a lot of us feel kind of like shame from the judging, especially if we've kind of like felt that from a young age, like shame and guilt sometimes if it's like ruining relationships. Is that something that you kind of like recognized as you were getting older, that this was kind of like these kinds of emotions were piling up?
like yeah, I know that I would start building like resentment almost
Mm-hmm.
towards people I care about, and it all goes back to like having that early understanding of like they can't help this. Something I even in college, I'm still like they can't control that this is happening, but I can try to control how I react to it. And luckily that took me years of on and off, being in therapy and, you know, up to that certain point, like, I only had some coping mechanisms for misophonia or even things that are connected to it. This disorders I found out I had later on in 2020 was just like headphones or sometimes I would take naps, to avoid the sounds. I just wanted to avoid that feeling of resentment towards, people that I care about, you know, because I didn't want to like judge them. Like I face judgment, I don't like being that judgmental person. And if I, you know, let that feeling of resentment that oddly naturally comes from, the severe sound sensitivity, um, I could have ended up being weirdly a more oddly judgmental person and, a little bit picky about who you know, because like you want to be able to like enjoy when you're out in public and like, um, be able to focus on what you're saying and what you're doing. But if you're talking to somebody that's making a noise that you don't like, but that's just not who they are as a person. I don't know if I'm making any sense,
No,
but
I know. I think everyone listening understands it's this internal debate that we have within our mind, like kind of this Jekyll and Hyde thing, where part of us, but like a lot of us rationally and consciously know that everything is normal. We shouldn't be reacting like this. But then this other side of us, this kind of more deeper, more reactive side of us that just can't help feeling that way. So we have this constant struggle, which ends up being exhausting. Maybe that's why taking naps. But it's just like, we're just kind of fighting within ourselves about it. And which is, gets to my one of my issues I have with some of these quote unquote therapies and treatments is like a lot of it focuses on that front end, the conscious side, um, where we a lot of us we know that this is not how we should feel, and so it's like you're almost you're kind of preaching to the choir, where it feels like there's something else inside of us that needs to be addressed. So, um, but going back to your I want to talk about your some of the therapies that you've been that you've been doing, but just it's going back once again to the resentment stuff. Did it affect like your relationships with family members? Did it did it push any kind of distance between you and anybody, or were you kind of quote unquote successful with the extroverted personality?
not always 100%. I would like to
Mm-hmm.
think it was more successful than, pushing certain people away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think something that's still really, even as a almost fully grown person now, is my relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
I think mainly the whole thing talking about resentment goes back to the fact that me and my dad are not as. There's other factors, but there's one factor in there that I can identify now from a young age is that you know he's a naturally loud person. I am sound sensitive, and he some for some reason the sounds he makes, you know, hits all the right triggers, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, when you said that, that made me think of that unfortunately, you know, being able to identify as that has definitely, helped. But, and I know it's not his fault. And that's what hurts, is that it's not his fault. I would, you know, would rather hide in my room with my, AirPods in, blaring music to draw out the sounds that I don't like to hear in my house, which most of the time he's just living. He's living his life. And, and who am I to be resentful of that? And sometimes I don't even know if I think that's 100% the right word either, but that's the only one that feels
Mm-hmm.
right. It's that inner, when it comes to that reactive, part of ourselves, like you were talking about, it feels like the relationship with my dad is very much more for me based off of my reactive side comes
Hmm.
out a little bit more than the side of me that's able to like, you know, I wouldn't even say masking it anymore for where I am now from, then even in 2020 to now. Um, is able to think, try to pin what I'm feeling. And that's what I'm learning in therapies is like pinning thoughts that I'm having, pin them being like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. How can I reframe? And
Gotcha.
that,
Sounds like
and that,
CB is it cognitive behavioral therapy that you're doing?
yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. Yeah. And so yeah, there's a lot of reframing the kind of the conscious mind, which is that been helpful, or do you feel like there's more that is not being addressed yet?
I feel like I'm on the right track for
Hmm.
things being addressed. Um, I'm finally, it took me a bit, but I finally found an amazing therapist who I just started working with. And, you know, she and like many others, unfortunately, in my area, not many know. When I bring up misophonia, they look confused.
Yeah, we've all seen that
So,
face. Yeah.
oh, but she looked confused. But it was one of the first times when I remember it being like, okay, let's
Awkward
talk more
moment.
about this. A little awkward moment, but this woman's wonderful, and she was just like,
Yeah.
you know what? That's something that she wants to address everything, and so maybe like I was saying, I'm on the misophonia and everything. I'm on the right track. I just think it's gonna be a while for me to find the right um, medicines and the right um, therapy, you know, because we're just getting to know each other. I'm like in the very, beginning
Hmm.
stages currently as we're recording this podcast. I'm in the very beginning stages of a new therapy, but
Hmm. Hmm.
I have good feelings about it. So finally, someone that wants to hear my story, not just with normal, what's not considered normal, but like more known mental disorders that I am dealing with, but also want to hear about one that I know that I have, but many others either didn't want to 100%, listen,
Hmm.
or they actually want to talk about it, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's we should definitely applaud therapists who may not have heard of misophonia, but is at least willing to research it. There have been people who come on and have said that, yeah, like I went to a therapist and they didn't know what it was, but they went down rabbit holes to help out and to learn about it. So that's great. Hopefully, this will be helpful. Um, and you mentioned medicine? Are you also taking some kind of medication for other things? And do you know if it's kind of like if it affects the misophonia?
Oh yes, I like to think it helps with me coping with it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, I have ADHD and I have a severe anxiety disorder. Um, and I also recently found out that I'm autistic, but it's mild.
Hmm.
So that came.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that was a surprise. I with misophonia and the temper tantrums and everything. For the last few years I've been like wondering, you know, is it more than just ADHD? There was just more to it,
Hmm.
and getting officially diagnosed with that, I've actually never fully spoken that I got diagnosed with that just recently, like literally like a month, not a month, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I found out.
No, I
So,
I think I've had people have come on the podcast recently who've gone through a similar arc where they've just recently found out that they were also uh, diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum as well, but also have like misophonia and ADHD. So yeah, these are definitely common comorbid phenomena. Um, and just to I this might sound ignorant, but you mentioned like severe anxiety issues, but you also mentioned in the past, obviously, that you're very extroverted. I'm kind of curious, what does that feel like when you're extroverted, but then you have like very severe anxiety? Are you kind of like,
Yeah.
do you feel it at the same time, or is it like if you're extroverted, then all of a sudden there's a breaking point where you need to, I don't know, deal with the anxiety?
That's a great question. I know I don't think that's ignorant or anything, you know. I think that's a lot of people are curious about that. I'm not gonna lie, even professionals I have spoken to, you know, um, being like, "You're so social." That's what's confusing is with the anxiety and the autism. It's like confusing, you know. But it definitely feels like I have like you know how I think of it this way in like the Sims 4 game.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they have different bars of like energy. Like I have my own specific kind of bars that like stay really high in the green and then go down to the low red where you have to
Mm-hmm.
take care of them. Otherwise you might just, you know, you pee your pants or um pass out in the middle of the floor wherever you are. You know how Sims do that when you don't take care of them. Um if that makes any sense. That I have my own bars,
Yeah.
you know.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
And so like I push myself until I'm, you know, in the very bottom bar. And I always explained it also, besides just that, is like coming up with analogies really helped me to like explain because with ADHD, I'm the kind definitely 100% kind of person that will go off in different tangents. And you know, they all connect like connected like tangled headphone wire, but they all kind of connect. Um Something else that analogies help me explain it better is building blocks. Like I'm building like a high tower, being like, okay, this is my stuff, but then I'm also taking on other people's energy. I have the time for it. You know, being an extroverted person, I, you know, deep empath. So it's like a blessing and a curse.
Are you familiar
So,
with sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
oh, you're
but
okay. You're
are
okay.
you familiar with the term like HSP, highly sensitive person? A lot of people have come on here and said they've kind of self-diagnosed as being an HSP, where highly empathic, maybe are able to kind of like read the room a lot faster than most people, or more deeply. um and I feel like also, I don't know if I'm going to explain this properly, but like if two people are like kind of talking past each other in a conversation in front of me, I'm like get very frustrated because I'm like, I know exactly what you're trying to say to each other, and if you just like, if I can just explain it to you, then this conversation could have lasted like 2 seconds. um I don't know if that like the idea of a highly sensitive person is something that resonates with you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. um, it kind of like everything kind of with my brain like smushes together. And if I feel like being a highly sensitive person and ADHD would like, if I
Hmm.
read the room, they'll kind of butt heads um, because sometimes I have a challenge socially trying to explain what I want to say, but it doesn't come out right. Or I'm like talking in circles trying to get to my point, and sometimes I don't even successfully reach the point. But I see exactly what you're saying is that um, I have like all this advice or all these things that I want to like see about a situation, and I can't help but like want to help, you know, want to. I realize that you can't fix people, but that's just like an automatic, you know, thought. It's like
Hmm.
you're so used to being in, you know, struggling yourself and dealing with your own personal pain that the idea of someone else that you love and care about in your life, like your friends. Like I can't tell you how many times with my friends, even with my sister, my mom, you know, if anyone hurts them, I burst into tears. Like you
Hmm.
know, I just, you know, with misophonia and all these comorbidities I put up with for how Lord knows how long, and finally getting answers for that. But I don't want anyone else to experience that. And that's kind of why when I found your podcast and why I, you know, decided to, you know, sign up. I've never talked to anyone, like I'm just like many others on this podcast. I've never talked to anyone about misophonia or, but if there's a chance that someone listens to mine for some reason, yeah, I don't want them to wonder or be in pain. And that is where the highly sensitive person side of me connects with everything else. It just, I it's just that's why I'm a music therapist incoming, because I want others to be okay. If I can help them in any way, even with this podcast.
Oh, you definitely
I
will. And just like I think you were inspired by listening to episodes, people are going to be inspired listening to this story because, yeah, like I said a few times here, yeah, I mean, a lot of people share kind of like different aspects of your story. So there's something out there that brings us all together. But there's a lot of people who just don't know. They're just kind of like in suffering in silence, or well, another point I was going to make earlier when you're talking about the energy levels is like, you're just you're a perfect example of like, you never know about a person, right? They could look like they're completely fine, extroverted on the surface, but you just happen to see them at full energy. You don't realize that most of their time might be, or a disproportionate amount of their time might be at, very low or negative energy. And so it's important to keep that in mind.
Exactly. And that's where, like, most people on the surface, when you see me, and you might be, I'm super social, and you'll be able to just be like, oh, wow, she's so nice. She's so friendly. But as you get to know me, you see the anxiety, and you're just like, it's like functional.
Mm-hmm.
But then that low energy bar hits. And one time I literally had such a low energy bar that I just had to leave. Like, it was a flight response. I just was so
Mm-hmm.
tired. I didn't want other people to see me when I wanted to help them see me be at one of my lows. So I literally ran out and I said, I gotta go. And I just drove away because I just had to. I was at an all time energy low. And,
Yeah.
it's like empathy. It's a blessing and a curse.
Right. Right. And have you told, you say you haven't really told anybody, but have you told any kind of close friends about it?
About,
Misophonia.
yes. I have a close circle. I feel like my mom is like one
Mm-hmm.
of the first people that knows about it. Like, my mom's my best friend. We have a complicated, like, as any close mother and daughter do, is complicated, but we're so close.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I feel like when I told her misophonia multiple times throughout my life, from like young age to now, she knows about it more than anyone. Besides, like, she knows it as well as I do, pretty much as well as much as I do about, based from how much I talk about it. Um, but mainly like my mom and a couple close friends. Um, when I explained it, sometimes it comes from where they made a noise and it's been bothering me for so long that it gets to a point where, I can't contain the masking, the, trying to keep my cool
Yeah.
because I know they can't help it. And I have to, you know, try my best and explain. But luckily I have been picky about who I tell people about it too. Because like you said, not 100% many people know about it. But I've had many of my good friends from high school and college, they know about it and they're so loving and, they accept me for me. And I've been pretty lucky because I've had experiences where it didn't go so well, maybe like once or twice, but, um, I've been
Was it like,
lucky.
were the bad experiences kind of like, maybe, trying to make the sound louder or something, like, you mean this kind of reaction, or where they're trying to mock you, or make a
I
trigger to
would,
see a reaction?
no,
No.
I would say maybe even trying to explain it, and then it's mainly been the confused looks,
Hmm. Yeah.
or it's been trying to explain it, but I'm too emotional and I can't even, you know
Uh,
because I already talk enough a lot sometimes as it is, which is not a bad thing. I've
mm-hmm.
accepted, I can be a talker. I can talk your ear off, or I can be really quiet. Um, but when I get emotional, I get emotional. So that's one of the bad experiences where I try to explain a misophonic occurrence that happened, and then it's just too confusing, or they look like they're not understanding, so the conversation, shouldn't even continue.
Yeah. What does your you mentioned your mom, what does your dad what does your dad think of this? Does he try to talk about it? Does he try to be quieter, or just
Yes, he
doesn't phase him?
does.
Okay.
Yeah, like luckily, especially over the last couple years, um, I haven't personally been able to. Maybe sometimes I'm able to come up to him because confrontation. I think this is common. Confrontation be scary, no matter if you love
Mm-hmm.
them or not. Like it's confrontation. So being able to tell him, "Hey, I'm trying to do homework. Can it's mainly when I'm doing homework that we got him headphones for Christmas, so he uses them as often as he can because he knows that like I usually have a lot of homework or something, and I always have something to do. Like I can tell that he's trying, and I'm so appreciative of that. Because I think him and my mom talk, and I think he has an idea about it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I mean, that's sometimes all we can hope for is that at least somebody's trying, and that can kind of hopefully convince our mind that there isn't some imminent threat, which is kind of what we feel a lot of the time. Um, I wanted uh, to also steer to kind of towards obviously what you're doing in school now with music therapy, but to get there, you mentioned something about analogies helping, and I love that because I don't know, I mentioned on the podcast I'm always looking for analogies and metaphors for misophonia, for kind of some creative works I'm working on for around misophonia. But do you first of all, do you have any other maybe metaphors off the top of your head, or but I would also like to just kind of hear about how you got into music and therapy, and have you used music as a therapy even before you got into college? Like, are you a musician?
Yes. So, um,
Sorry, that was like three questions randomly at
oh,
once, but I
oh,
probably have
that's
some. It's probably just my brain kind of going all over the place too.
okay. It's okay. If anyone can understand that, it's anyone that has like ADHD or like an attention problem, like having multiple, your brain having, like, I think anyone can understand that really. So, you're not alone with that, I promise. Um, because my brain's doing these almost the same exact thing. So let's see, break it down.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked about other, analogies or anything, metaphors I might have on top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like those are the two best ones I've got,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially the building blocks when it comes to like taking on other people's energies. And definitely the energy bar thing. Um, that's personally my favorite one that I've actually never I've talked about the building block one in my past, but I've never actually talked about thinking myself as like a sim and having like
Yeah.
different energy bars. Um, that's one excellent way, at least in my opinion, to explain um, when you have a lot going on in your mind, but yet you want to be, that you're that empathetic and you like to help other people, even though you need to help yourself before you can help anyone else, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
what was that?
and then yeah, I want to get into then let's just get into. I'm very curious about all the music stuff that you're working on. So, um, are you a musician? I guess actually maybe I should ask first.
Yes, I am. So I've been singing pretty much
Ah, okay.
my whole life.
Yeah.
I've been classically trained since I was like the age of
Wow.
like 9 to 11 years old. I started, and now that's continuing. That kind of classical kind of training is continuing on as I'm a voice focused major. That's my major instrument in my
Mm.
at college.
And by
Yeah.
classically trained, mainly operatic or other other kind of which kind, maybe what kind of genres are you most I guess interested in?
Yeah, mainly more towards I am a higher soprano, or what they
Mm-hmm.
call a soprano one.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think the classic soprano one example is Christine Daae in the musical Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you think of
Yep.
that kind of singing, you think of that's what people thought of me for many years is like they made a connection between like Phantom of the Opera,
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
me,
Yeah.
like me. So basically, mainly like that kind of stuff. Like I also was trained more in musical theater as well, mainly like the higher stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
and
Interesting. Fascinating.
now I'm really being classically trained. As in, right now, one of my pieces is from the Marriage of Figaro,
Mm-hmm.
written by Mozart.
Mozart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. That's fascinating. And growing up, was that singing like? Do you feel like that was ever part of kind of like helping your, helping kind of calm your nervous system, kind of like help you cope with any of your kind of psychological, I want to say issues?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the easiest word to say. That's what I
Yeah.
would say too. Is like do you call it a disorder issue?
I'll call it
It's
an
all
issue. It's a no
like,
catch all.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's broad. I think it's like broad.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
trust me, I don't easily get offended, so you're good. Um, but I'd say so. I feel like it's helped me more than I, you know, even realize it's
Realize.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
And
really easy for
so,
me to pick that.
yeah. And so, I guess, yeah, why did you, so you can talk about the program you're in, maybe so music therapy. Yeah, you're actually not the first, and maybe not even the second person who's in college for music therapy who's come on the show. But yeah, can you tell me a bit about the program and kind of what the goals are of music therapy?
Oh, absolutely. This is something they're training us for. An important thing that, even starting as a freshman is like, you know, when people think of music therapy, you just think like, oh, you're just going to,
Gonna
you
listen to
know,
some classical
so
music and you'll calm
this is
down.
exactly, or you're
Yeah.
just going to come in and just sing. It's not
Hmm.
exactly that. I would say that might be there's multiple forms of treatment. Basically, music therapy is where you can work in a group setting or an individual setting, and you come up with a client and yeah, I'm trying to explain this correctly. Client and therapist relationship. You come up with a goal, and there are many techniques and treatments that connect to that goal that you get trained in, um, such as like lyric analysis, reminiscence, um, even like just simple as like like I'm learning about like movement. Like I'm in a rhythmics class, I'm learning about eurythmics,
Mm.
connection to the art in the body,
Yeah.
and I'm learning about like improvisation, percussion,
Hmm.
and being on the piano. I have like exams that come up for like I'm in a jazz improv class for on the
Hmm.
piano, so I'm learning about. We're about to get our first piece in the class, so all these classes combined into one kind of connect you to different treatments based on what the client needs, what the client's goal is, and it's proved to do amazing things. Better than me even explaining it, there's a amazing documentary out there that I watched through my college that made me so emotional. Because we focus on all different kind of areas, like older adults, young adults, children,
Hmm.
developmental disabilities, mental health, physical disabilities. We work with the whole. Um, there's this one I would recommend to you to watch or anyone. It's called. Um, I think it's like, oh my goodness, I wish I could remember. Oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. But it's you can find it on Amazon. It's like music saved me or something like that. It's about a man named Tom. He's a music therapist, and his in his first 3 months of his career, he got a case where a young teenager, not a young teenager, but he got in a snowboarding accident and had a brain injury, and how music therapy played a role in getting him to talk again with other therapies. That's what's cool is that music therapy can combine with other therapies. I'm so sorry. I'm passionate about what I do, so it's
No, I'm passionate about this whole topic. So yeah, I'm fascinated by hearing that. And yeah, we'll get that the name and link to that documentary offline because there's been one or two that I know have watched as well. I think they're more focused on music therapy or theater play therapy for children. So I thought you were going to talk about one of those, but if this is a new one, yeah, I definitely want to see it. Yeah, I'm fascinated by this entire topic.
It was around like 2000. Like I think it came out, and like the documentary might have come out just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It rolled around like the early 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the story it's just is incredible, and I know the guy's name that was had the brain injury. His name is Forrest, and
Mm-hmm.
the music therapist's name was Tom. So
Gotcha.
like it's something like Music Save Me or something like that. Um,
Yeah,
but I
we'll get
highly
it, and I'll
recommend.
put it in the show notes for sure. Yeah. I'll definitely watch it this week if I can find it. Yeah, very very cool. Um, and you said you were doing musical theater too. I'm just curious. Have you done like have you sang like any Stephen Sondheim? He's kind of my personal favorite.
Oh, I love Sondheim.
Okay, we have to talk
Um,
offline over email later. But yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
very
Um,
cool.
I, yeah, I definitely have. I did a lot of like in my voice lessons. I think I sang some Sondheim, and I did
Hmm.
musical theater classes. Like not from college, but when I was a kid, a younger teenager, I did like through like my local theater. I miss it. I haven't done a show since high school. I was in The Little Mermaid last time, so I want to get back out there for sure.
Yeah, I know we're going off topic, but I'm so I actually didn't even know who he was until like a couple of years ago, and I'm like 46, and so I'm like catching up on a lot of time. But he's been like a major obsession with me. Of course, he passed away just as I'm starting to get to know who he was. But no, I'd love to talk about nerd out on him and his music after. But we're getting to about an hour. I feel like we've covered a lot. I'm sure we can go on forever, but yeah, I guess anything else you wanna share with people who are listening. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Oh, that's okay. I guess basically what I was saying earlier, if anyone, sometimes with me, I don't fully get to finish things. But if someone listened till the very end, um, if there's anyone out there who is just starting their mental health journey like I am, I'm only 3 years into mine. It is a long journey. It is a process. Even knowing that you might, if you're figuring out misophonia through this, I just validate that and know that it's okay. You just kind of, my grandma says, you have to accept things to continue to move forward. And at your own pace, just take the time that you need to accept things about yourself. And know that if you found this podcast, hello, you're not alone. I promise. It's so easy to get caught up in the feeling of um, what your brain's telling you, or, you know, trust me, especially what your brain is telling you. Um, there's so much I could say, but I thought I would like have more. But one thing I could definitely say is that do not be afraid to reach out for help. If this is, and if you can't don't want to come on here and tell your story, don't be afraid to share your story with other people, because you never know like what connections you can make, because you could be missing out on so much.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like,
there's people out there who have this or who have something comorbid that can help them understand. But you're right, validation is absolutely number one important. This should you should feel validated by your what you're feeling is not some weird quirk or idiosyncrasy. This is something that other people share. Yeah, acceptance is important. Although acceptance can go into two directions. Like some people um, say, "Oh, just accept it," and just kind of like shrug it off, which is hard to do. But then there's acceptance in kind of like giving yourself some self compassion, which I think goes closer towards trying to, um, you know, help it. Like help yourself is if you can give yourself some self compassion, it can kind of help um, train your mind that you're not under threat when you're going through a trigger, because that's what your body is telling you is you're in danger.
And it's like, find a person, even if it's not reaching out for professional help. There are people in your life that care about you more than you know. And if misophonia is something that you feel comfortable sharing about, it has helped me so much to have someone like my mom. And if you're not close with your parents, is there an aunt or an uncle, a cousin, or a friend in your life that you feel like you could talk to? Because I promise you, if you feel like they're not going to understand, maybe they won't, but there is somebody in your life that'll at least listen. Because you're not weird. It's, if you come across this podcast, it's true. It's a real thing. Don't be afraid to reach out. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and if
was
there's
afraid to.
yeah, no, and you've done you're doing a great job. It's going to help a lot of people, and yeah, to other people, like just remind you that if you don't have anybody in your life, you can find groups on social media, and also, I think almost everybody who's come on to this podcast has always been gracious and kind of connecting with people who wanted to connect with them. So I can connect people as well. So yeah, the more word gets out, I think the community is super important.
One thing I can say for sure is, um, besides having a person in your life, sometimes even an animal, um, like whether it's a dog, a cat, snake. That was a very sudden change, or like a hamster, or any
A
animal
bear
that,
or a
a
tiger.
bear. But I have actually, my little Ollie has been by my side this entire time, and I was really nervous, and but he's been a big support. So support systems work, people, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is your cat or your dog or hamster, animals,
Mm-hmm.
they work.
Yeah, and anything that's empathetic can work. Well, yeah, Abby, this has just been wonderful. Yeah, it's been great to hear everything you've said. Hopefully, hopefully it kind of was good for you too, and it kind of flew by. This is going to help a lot of people. And we definitely want to talk about sleep Sondheim at a later date. So maybe
Oh,
over email.
absolutely. You have my email. So
Okay, cool.
absolutely.
Well, yeah, thanks again, Abby.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Abby. Always great to talk to musicians and theater nerds. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's easiest to just send a message on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast, and on Twitter we're Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.